This is the coolest thing about science, about biohacking. We're rediscovering ancient knowledge. I started running an anti-aging nonprofit group, which is why I wrote Superhuman, the new book about anti-aging. Bulletproof took off in biohacking, by extension, first with these two really focused populations. One was entrepreneurs and software developers, and the other one was Wall Street. These are people who have to have brains that work all the time and would like to look good or sometimes have to look good, but it's all about, do I have the energy to bring it? Do I have the willpower? I spent $1 million and God knows how many thousand hours, because if someone had told me this when I was 20, I would have taken all the energy that went into this and put it into something else useful. I was old when I was young. I used to be 300 pounds. I had arthritis in my knees when I was 14, constantly on antibiotics. I would have sinus infection or strep throat. Do you know that I worked out an hour and a half a day, 6 days a week, and I went on a low-fat, low-calorie diet the entire freaking time? It didn't work. I did everything you're supposed to do. So I'm sitting here going, what the heck? I gotta work on this. And decided that I would hack it. So now, 20 years later, I've been studying and learning and immersing myself in that field to get the skills and the knowledge that led to biohacking, led to this quest to live a very long time. If you were gonna live for 180 or more years, maybe you take better care of the planet. And so we will have a much more conscious, caring environment when we have more people who are gonna live a long time. And that's why this matters so much.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Dave Asprey was first on London Real about 7 years ago, back before we had this studio, before I was dressed like this, and him and his company Bulletproof became one of our sponsors, and I started biohacking myself. I was drinking Bulletproof Coffee, taking his mitochondrial supplements, learning to optimize my sleep, and it really changed my life. Now, Dave is back with his brand new book called Superhuman, and during this episode, we went deep on gut health, light therapy, veganism, sleep, you name it. I seriously believe many of these things can materially affect the quality of your life. So pay attention and enjoy this incredible episode from Dave Asprey. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Dave Asprey, the Silicon Valley tech entrepreneur, author, broadcaster, and world-recognized biohacker. You are the founder and CEO of Bulletproof, the diet and lifestyle company best known for Bulletproof Coffee, a unique recipe that's helped everyone from CEOs to professional athletes up their physical and mental game. You've written 5 books, including the New York Times bestsellers HeadStrong and Gamechangers, and you host the Webby award-winning podcast Bulletproof Radio. Your new book, Superhuman, reveals how to dramatically extend our lifespan and make us smarter, fitter, and happier than ever before. Dave, welcome back to London Real.
Brian, it's been 6.5 years since I sat in this chair. Can you believe that?
Crazy. Actually, it wasn't even that chair because it was the old show with the webcams.
That's true.
That was our very first time, 6.5 years.
Yeah, and in fact, I came back in these chairs. I remember going, man, you've upgraded. So, man, how London Real's changed. This is awesome.
Yeah, look, it's great having you back. And look, before we get started, I just want to thank you for all of your earlier support on this show. You were like our first major sponsor. You were the official drink of London Real. And if everybody watches the old episodes, they'll see, you know, all of the ads and all of the stuff. And yeah, so just thanks for that.
I appreciate your support. Then I still support the show. I'm a fan.
Yeah, no, it's really good stuff, man. And look, really excited about this book. And it's funny, when I've watched my life for the last 4 or 5 years, I'm guessing probably because of your influence, is that I've adopted a lot of these things, from your sleep stuff to, I think the world adopted a lot of your intermittent fast and stuff, waking up to fats and all that stuff. And so, look, I'm excited to go into this book,
Fun.
in a big way. First of all, what's it like being in London? And how do you normally feel in this city? And has it changed over the years?
I really like London. Before I started Bulletproof, I used to commute from the west coast of the States to Cambridge, England, once a month for a week. It was kind of brutal because of jet lag. That was one of the reasons I could write all my sleep hacking early posts that have just been echoed around the internet. It's because I would fly here and I'd try stuff and it wouldn't work, and I'd come back the next month. And one of my strongest memories was saying, I think I solved the problem. I was all excited. I like wrote a note in my journal. Okay, if I land and then I exercise to raise my body temperature, that's going to do it. The reason it worked there is I exercised outdoors because it was a rare sunny day in England. So I went to a park and did yoga. But the next time I was all excited, I came back and did yoga in my hotel room and I was completely a zombie. And I was like, oh, you have to be outside. There's a light thing and there's an earthing thing. And so I have lots of sample sizes of London. And I would say it does feel different than it was. That was 10, 15 years ago. Yeah, it's hard to say London's metropolitan. It's always been metropolitan, but it's like the food scene has changed pretty substantially in that amount of time. There's really good food, and it just feels younger, a little bit more entrepreneurial than it used to. Yeah, I don't feel like I'm naked when I don't have a sport coat on. And 15 years ago, if you didn't have a sport coat, you were sort of probably homeless.
Yeah, that's true. And is the community here open to a lot of biohacking ideas and upgraded self and that kind of thing?
Oh, they're super open to it. In fact, the reason I'm here in town is there's a conference of 1,000 people, the first biohacking conference in Europe, called the Health Optimization Summit. So Bulletproof or Upgrade Labs, one of our sister companies, is a backer of the conference. So I'm going to give a keynote. And there's huge interest. Bulletproof took off in biohacking, by extension, first with these two really focused populations. One was entrepreneurs and software developers, and the other one was Wall Street. Because from there it actually went straight to athletes in Hollywood. And these are people who have to have brains that work all the time and would like to look good or sometimes have to look good. But it's all about, do I have the energy to bring it? Do I have the willpower? So, in London, you've got your celebrities and you've certainly got your bankers. And if you need to do that call at 2 a.m. and you're a zombie, you might lose $1 billion. And so those are the people who are going to do anything on earth to stay focused. And of course it's popular here.
Yeah, I remember, I think on that first show when you came here, you were meeting with some hedge fund guys in the city and things like that. So.
In fact, that's why I was here,
Yeah.
In fact, that's how I funded Bulletproof. I don't know if I've ever talked about this. I just moved to Canada and I didn't have a lot of spare cash. I was down very, very low on personal reserves because you move to a new country. I'd taken some time off work and was reassessing things and had just started working as a VP at a big tech company.
Yeah, I remember, security, right?
Yeah, computer security, Trend Micro. So I was building up my cash reserves, nice stable job and all that. And I started Bulletproof mostly just, I wanted to write about the stuff that no one had told me. It wasn't even going to be a business really. And then I got a call from an investment bank and they said, hey, we know about your blog and you actually talk about becoming smarter. We want to pay you to fly around the world and meet with hedge fund managers, these billionaire guys, because they won't take a meeting with us, but if we bring you into the room, they'll take a meeting with you and then we can talk to them about forming a relationship. So I was kind of the bait, right?
Interesting.
And so I ended up getting paid $40,000 over the course of 8 trips, Singapore, London, Hong Kong, just all over the world. And I would line it up. So, I have a keynote for the computer security industry. I'm already in Singapore. Why don't I just pick up one of these gigs? And I put all that money into hiring people at Bulletproof. And that was literally how I funded the company till we were north of $20 million in revenue. It was all funded and bootstrapped.
Wow. And what were you teaching those guys back then?
I was teaching them the stuff that's in the Bulletproof diet, that's in HeadStrong. One of my favorite things is, let's see, I don't think it's in Superhuman, but it was in Gamechangers. I talk about a form of brain training called dual and back training. It is the most horrible brain training you can ever do because it just makes you feel like a failure and you hate it. It's worse than exercising in a way that you don't like. So I just told these hedge fund guys, you can double your working memory. You can increase your IQ points by at least 10 or 12. And these are real numbers. It only takes 20 days for 20 minutes a day, and you won't do it because it sucks. And I was right.
And now they all want to do it.
Well, they all wanted to do it, but almost none of them did it. The ones who did it loved it, but most of them looked at the youngest guy in the room, who was sort of the intern, and said, "You do it." So they would make a guinea pig in the office do it to see if it worked. But I would teach that, as well as just, here's what you eat, here's what a smart drug is, here's how to not get jet lag. And when you're running at that level, every ounce of performance that you can get, it moves the needle in a big way. So they cared a lot.
Yeah, and this is before the series Billions, where you can see how these guys with the IVs and all that stuff. But
yeah, drip IVs. I couldn't believe that was on Billions because I've been doing IVs. I popularized IVs, right?
Yeah.
I used to do photos of that, and it would trigger people like, you can't have an IV. I'm like, guys, it's vitamins. And then you get this class of people, Dave has to have vitamins because he's so sick. I'm like, I have 4 companies that are probably doing better than most companies, right? Not just Bulletproof. And I have kids and a podcasting trip out there. I'm kind of running at a good pace here. And you could say I'm really sick, but I don't really show that way, do I? I'm not really sick.
Right. But you've always kind of not triggered, but maybe caused controversy because...
Me? Never.
I mean, modafinil and being honest about it, you were really open about testosterone replacement. And you've always put that stuff out when the world wasn't ready to hear it. I mean, people don't remember 6-7 years ago, this was like, unheard of, this stuff, right?
Do you remember the title of my post that blew up modafinil?
No, what was it?
It was called, Why You Are Suffering from a Modafinil Deficiency. Okay, is that the best headline ever?
It's good. It's on LinkedIn or Medium or?
That was on just the Bulletproof blog.
Right.
And in fact, I just put a lot of the old content, some of it we'd taken down, I put it up on daveasprey.com. So a lot of the things that are less having to do with collagen and coffee and protein bars and all that stuff, I'm putting on my own page because I talk about ejaculation as performance enhancement. Like if you do a little too much, you have a porn problem. Hey, can we just be open about that? I don't know how much that has to do with coffee and nutrition. So just putting a lot of the more cutting edge stuff on my own page where you can talk about things that are whatever I feel like.
Right.
Because if it matters, someone's got to talk about it. And I'll tell you, modafinil changed my whole life. And I felt like not talking about it would have been almost a form of cheating. I'm actually really mad at Lance Armstrong, right? And I'm mad at him because he didn't tell us what he was doing. I'm not mad that he did it. I'm grateful that he was doing all that stuff. Holy crap, the man defied nature and did something after cancer that is so noteworthy and noble and awesome. And I understand why he didn't tell anyone because they wouldn't let him do it. But the problem there wasn't that he found a way. The problem was that we didn't all get to benefit from the way.
Right. So he did this incredible biohacking thing to create a high-performance person.
Yeah.
It was just not against the rules at the time.
Yeah. And look, breaking rules, that's what you do sometimes when the rules are dumb. And let me just be really clear. The rules that require older athletes to suffer and get old and infirm because they can't use testosterone, those are stupid. And they're actually an affront to our basic humanity. We have to stop that. And the other thing is, you look at the Indy racing, you look at the Formula One racing, we learn so much from pushing those limits, and we take that and we put it in our Hondas and our Fords and our Jaguars, right? That's how evolution happens. But when it comes to professional sports and athletes, they're not allowed to tell us what they're doing. I want to know what they do because maybe it's useful for me. In fact, if they ban a substance that, like modafinil is banned in most sporting events, maybe that means it works.
Right.
And maybe that means you might want to use that tool. So it's a very different perspective, and that makes some people really mad. I'm not advocating cheating. I'm advocating sharing knowledge.
Right. So how do you do that? Because they have to cheat to push the performance somehow.
It's a conundrum. How about we change the rules?
Yeah.
So we say, look, if you want natural bodybuilding or racing, where you agree to sign up to a set of principles, you could also have plant-based, where you have a bunch of people with like saggy skin and bad ligaments. Or you could
talk about the plant-based later.
Sorry.
Good. I can see all the hate coming in
was
now.
Was that controversial? Sorry.
Right, okay. And Dave was plant-based and raw vegan for a while.
Yeah.
So we'll
so I own it. I really went deep on that. And if it worked, I would eat gravel only too. Like I would seriously be a celeriatarian if there was
Knowing you would eat gravel if it worked.
Yeah. Like it's okay if it doesn't taste good as long as I get the results. I didn't get the results.
So you think for athletics we should have a category like natural, vegan,
and enhanced.
Take whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on the enhanced side, it'd be great if there was a board of doctors who are saying, all right, you got to tell us everything. And by the way, that thing, that's going to kill you, right? And no, right? That would be so informative, and we would learn so much as a species about how we actually work. Because a lot of the biohacks, the stuff that's in Superhuman, we figured that out in the space program. We figured that out with diving, free diving, and all these weird things about the limits of heat and oxygen levels, temperature, fasting. All of these things a doctor would have told you is dangerous. In fact, when I was 300 pounds in stone, that's 50% more than I am now, whatever that is. They literally told me, Dave, if you don't eat 6 times a day, your body will go into starvation mode and you'll get fatter. I'm like, I'm 300 pounds. I could eat 6 times a day. That was the wrong advice. They should have said, stop eating for a day once a week, and I would have become healthier.
Right.
Right. So you shouldn't always trust the doctors. But in a case like this, where you're saying, all right, I might die, it's probably worth doing that.
Yeah, somebody said there could be a future where you go to an athletic event and everyone in the arena is on steroids, and they're watching the arena and everyone there isn't. So you've got these superhumans.
It's totally happening already.
Right, everyone in the ring who isn't allowed to do those things, and that becomes this weird dichotomy we have.
That is beautiful.
And
by the way, I'm a little bit pissed off because I come here and you didn't offer to let me try your coffee.
My Bulletproof coffee. I was a little embarrassed.
Well, no, you have
our own coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coffee. I was like, you're not going to offer me a sample of it?
So I know. Well, I give you a bag.
After the show, I want to try it.
And we actually blended up some Bulletproof coffee as well. And
you did?
The whole team
thanks,
was trying it. So yeah, no, it's a whole legacy event. On this note, I think it's important maybe to start off briefly, like, people don't understand Bulletproof was built out of you scratching your own itch. They think it was this thing, but when you were on the first time, I think you were still at your tech company, and then you're like, oh, I'm going to do this full time. And so maybe briefly you could tell that story about you being 300 pounds, and also that trip to Tibet, which also changed things.
Let's walk through that. So I was old when I was young. I had arthritis in my knees when I was 14. I played soccer all the time. And I played in like 2 knee braces and it hurt all the time. And I just thought that's how it was supposed to be. And when I was young, I was constantly on antibiotics. I would have sinus infection or strep throat and asthma and just all these unhealthy things, behavioral disorders, ADHD, oppositional defiant disorder. And I probably still have that. And really what would have been classified as Asperger's today. So in fact, on the test for that, most of my family members on one side of my family score pretty highly there.
Okay.
So my brain's weird. I had neurological inflammation all the time. And in my mid-20s, like, Dave, high risk of stroke and heart attack, high blood sugar, you're pre-diabetic. Like what is going on here? And then cognitive dysfunction, like really serious cognitive dysfunction, to the point where I'm thinking I wouldn't hire myself to do my job because I know I'm at the company that held Google's first servers and helped to grow that and the Facebook back when they were the Facebook, and played a meaningful role in that early evolution of how we build stuff on the internet. And my brain was frying, and some of it was stress, but some of it was core biology. So I'm sitting here going, what the heck? I got to work on this, and decided that I would hack it. So I said 20% of my income I'm going to spend on my own biology because I'm just tired of feeling tired. And when the doctor said, maybe it's high blood sugar that makes you feel tired, I pricked my fingers 5-10 times a day until they were all bloody all the time and drew graphs. And I went to the doctor 2 months later and said, it's not high blood sugar. It's a little high, but it's not spiking. It doesn't explain why I'm just so exhausted. And then eventually I figured out that I had chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia as a result of toxic mold exposure, in a house. In a house,
mold.
Mold.
And you made a whole documentary about mold a couple years ago, and most people would be shocked at the mold that's in their life.
It's nuts.
I mean, you have a great story about the tube in London that you told before where, and I mean, if you've been on the tube in London, it's pretty shocking in there.
The air in there is horrible.
Right, but you're really sensitive to mold, and a lot of people are, right?
Way more than people know. And there's people who go to the hospitals, people on psychiatric meds and antidepressants, and people whose relationships are ruined because mold grows in your house. Look, it's humid in London, right? And you have a 500-year-old building, and if it wasn't well maintained, it's a little musty. And then in a couple, one person has huge emotional swings and really crazy, vivid nightmares at night, and maybe some nosebleeds that don't make any sense. And the other person's like, I feel nothing. So then you end up drifting apart, and there's all this fighting. And I interviewed a couple in my documentary. It's moldymovie.com. It's a free viewing thing. And they're both doctors. And this happened. The guy's like, look, I'm a doctor. I thought she was nuts, but she wasn't nuts. And she's like, I'm a doctor. I thought I was nuts too. Until I did biopsies of every organ in my body and realized, oh yeah, there is a little thing going on here. And they eventually figured out what it was. So this is affecting hundreds of millions of people globally. It's a massive epidemic. I even started a company called Homebiotic that makes a probiotic. You spray it around your house and it eats mold as a fuel source. So it creates a balance in the basically the microbiome of your home. Okay. And this kind of a thing, these matter, they're huge things, but they're hidden. And the whole biohacking angle is you change the environment around you and inside of you so that you have control of your biology. And in my case, it's more of a kryptonite for me than it is for you probably, Brian. So I avoid that stuff. And if I go into the tube, I see colors sometimes from that air. I think I'm going to steer clear of the tube.
Yeah, I mean, I love London a lot, and I love the tube's functionality, but I was actually walking through this morning and I was like, Jesus, they could even use a coat of paint. But it's running pretty much 24/7. Yeah. So some of these stations have probably hundreds of years of mold.
We should spray some bacteria down there to balance it out. It's actually a good idea.
We should probably do that. Also, the trip you made to Tibet was a big eye-opener as well.
So anyway, this is my health background, and I decided I was going to hack it. And I started running an anti-aging nonprofit group, which is why I wrote Superhuman, the new book about anti-aging, because I met guys 3 times my age. Actually, yeah, it was in my late 20s. So yeah, people in their 80s and 90s. They were up till midnight, excitedly calling me about the latest anti-aging hacks, and they were owning their biology, and they were aging backwards and doing this crazy stuff. And I'm like, I'm the youngest guy in the room, but they asked me to be president of the organization. So I started learning. And so now 20 years later, I've been studying and learning and immersing myself in that field to get the skills and the knowledge that led to biohacking, led to this quest to live a very long time. And along the way, I said, I'm going to go to Tibet. I'm going to learn meditation from the masters. I've exhausted what's supposed to work in the West, and I'm still tired and things aren't working. And I've lost a bunch of weight. In fact, when I went to Tibet, I'd been a raw vegan for a while. And that was when I ended being a raw vegan because I'm not eating. There's no vegetables in Tibet. It's like a little bit of yak and some God knows what, but it's not a really, it's a real food desert, we'll put it that way. And I'm feeling really, really bad. I'm at 18,000 feet elevation at Mount Kailash. This is the holiest mountain in the world. It's considered sort of Mount Olympus for Buddhists and Hindus. You're not allowed to climb the mountain, but you walk in a 26-mile circle around the mountain, and it always has to be clockwise, and it's a really holy thing to do. I read about it in Outside magazine 25 years ago or something. So I just want to do this. I don't know why, but the pictures are awesome, and it's so remote. 5 days drive in a 4-wheel drive on dirt roads just to get to this place. There's nowhere else like it on Earth. Wow. And so I showed up there feeling like garbage. My knees are chewed up by walking the Annapurna circuit. And this little lady gives me a bowl of yak butter tea in the first night. And I'm like, this is kind of gross, but I don't really care. I'm so hungry and there's nothing to eat. And so I drank it. My brain turned on. This isn't even possible. So I drank 5 more of these things. And for the rest of that trip, I drank as much of that as I could find. And every time it worked. And it was so remarkable that when I got back to Silicon Valley, I said, I got to try this. So I bought some butter and I bought some tea, and it didn't work and it tasted bad. So I bought some really expensive pu'er tea and put some butter in it. It didn't work. So I bought 25 kinds of butter to see what the difference was. And it turns out grass-fed butter worked and regular butter didn't. Why? It turns out there's different fats in the butter when they eat the right stuff. So today I like Irish butter because there's lots of grass in Ireland. Amazing. And what ends up happening when you blend that up now, and I've written about this in a couple of my books, there's strange water chemistry that the Tibetans figured out thousands of years ago. And Brian, this is the coolest thing about science, about biohacking. We're rediscovering ancient knowledge.
That we thought were wives' tales.
Yeah.
But they weren't.
So here's what a sane Tibetan would do. Okay, there's no running water. My whole family lives with this one yak that gives us butter, and we tow our stuff around on a little cart because we're nomadic. So in the morning, I should eat a little bit of butter and drink my tea because it's less work and you don't have to do dishes. But every morning, the Tibetan women will pour the tea into a butter churn, add the butter, and then sit and churn the butter for 5 or 10 minutes, and then they drink it. It makes no sense. And I'll tell you, it doesn't work to eat a stick of butter and drink a cup of coffee. And I took the anti-aging knowledge. That's why brain octane oil is a part of this, not just MCT. Brain octane is a different substance. It's in the subcategory of MCTs. But you put that in there, that also has a different effect. But it's changing the water chemistry. And the Tibetans couldn't tell you why. They just know this works, this doesn't. And then in the West, we cross our arms, go, ugh. Why would they do that? Those savages or whatever our history of imperialism told us to say. But when you really get down to testing efficacy with things like the ring that measures you, the Oura ring, or any of these other things that are actual data from the body, you can't lie, you can't self-deceive anymore. You have to just look at, oh, this works, and then you do this thing that scientists hate. I don't know why it works. Right? In fact, if it does work, something I believe is wrong. And that's where the cutting edge of science happens.
Wow. And that became Bulletproof Coffee.
It did. It was thousands of tries. Maybe I'll try almond butter. Maybe I'll try coconut butter and all these different things. Yeah, about 1,000 tries. I'd give it to a bunch of friends. And when you get this certain thing where you drink something and your body's like, more. And part of it's flavor, but part of it's also like an energy thing. And you can tell there's a look on someone's face the first time they try properly made bulletproof coffee. They just get a signal that says, just do this. And after probably 150, 200 million cups of bulletproof coffee, I'd estimate we've made so far. And people have lost at least 1 million pounds on the bulletproof diet. I'm pretty confident that that gleam that people get the first time they try it, it's a real thing because your body's saying, I want to work better.
Right. And the proper cup of bulletproof coffee consists of coffee, the grass-fed butter, and some brain octane oil. Is that right? Which is kind of a derivative of the MCT.
Now, I'm not going to pick on any particular coffee, but the bulletproof coffee beans are lab tested. There's some stuff in coffee that can cause jitter. And in fact, it goes back to that mold story. It can cause jitter and anxiety. So the official trademark recipe uses the beans that don't create the jitter. Yeah. And not all coffee is going to do that. And because you're in Europe, Europe actually has standards for a toxin that forms in coffee. There are no standards in the US and Canada. So coffee that's illegal to sell in the UK will get sold in the US.
Right, right. And it's true. I noticed that when I have certain coffees in certain places, I definitely have different effects. And sometimes I stay away from coffee because of that, for that reason.
I gave it up for 5 years. I didn't drink coffee when I went to Tibet because it made me feel so much anxiety. And I thought, oh, I'm allergic to coffee. Great. And when I was a raw vegan, by the way, I got all kinds of allergies I didn't have. Right. And like, man, this sucks. But when I came back from Tibet, I had 1 cup of coffee just to see, all right. And I drank it and I felt like a great golden god. Fortunately, I went for the best coffee I could find. It was a clean coffee that didn't have mold in it. The next day I drank another cup of coffee because I'm celebrating. I can handle coffee again. All this garbage about adrenal function and coffee and all these things we tell ourselves about it. The next cup of coffee made me feel the way I used to feel. I'm like, I couldn't have shifted overnight. It was the coffee, and it was. And so that was what led me to create the lab-tested stuff that we make at Bulletproof. That was the first or second product we launched.
Okay, and that became really big. People in Hollywood adopting it.
Oh yeah.
Rick Rubin and on Tonight shows and all that stuff.
Crazy
and then
stuff.
When I actually went to Dan Pena for his Castle seminar, he was drinking it every day and he was serving it to everybody and I was making my own. So, it became a real thing, like a real kind of global thing. And then on the back of that, we saw a lot of your other biohacking products come in, collagens and all these other things.
Well, the reason collagen is a category today is Bulletproof. There was no one selling collagen out there. And I'm like, look what this does for you. This is a really important protein missing from the global market. So Bulletproof is now number 1, number 2 collagen brand out there. And there's a lot of knockoffs. MCT oil, we're the top MCT oil, even though our stuff, we're the top because it works better than normal MCT without the disaster pants effects.
Yeah.
But even then, the market size for lab tested mold-free coffee, it was 0. And now there's a market for it. For functional coffee, our cold brew coffee, which you can't get over on this side yet. The market size for functional coffee, where you buy it and drink it because it makes you feel good instead of gives you wings or because it's a sugar bomb, it was 0. And now these are all big categories that are growing. So the disruption of food is happening.
Yeah. I remember you used to send me all sorts of that stuff. I tried your first collagen bars, and we used to get all sorts of stuff from you guys. All, of course, the great brain octane oils, Unfair Advantage, your mitochondria stuff. So yeah, it's all good.
Maybe we can send you some more. All right,
maybe we can talk about some of that stuff today. In the book, you start off with a real bird's eye view, and I was wondering if we could talk about some of those things because, even though people know that
they're doing the wrong thing, sometimes maybe they should be reminded. So you start off with the 4 killers.
Yep.
And maybe we should go through those and then talk about some of these pillars of aging. Because the thing you say in the book, on the front cover, it says age backwards and maybe even live forever, which are bold statements.
Yeah.
And probably get people excited, right?
I would hope so, but a lot of people get scared. And let's just talk about that. Then I'll talk about the 4 killers.
Yeah.
This could be a bit of a downer. A lot of people say, in fact, Maria Shriver, either I was on her show or she was on my show, and a fantastic human being, leads the women's Alzheimer's movement. Women get Alzheimer's more than men.
Your father was an early patient of that,
Yeah.
right? Sergeant Shriver, I think.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so you see all this just craziness out there. But Maria Shriver says, I said, how long do you want to live? She said, I don't want to live a long time. Like, I don't want to live longer than the normal amount because, and then you get this sense of dread, and it's wheelchairs, tubes and monitors and diapers and not knowing your own name and being entirely dependent on other people and being forgotten. This is the picture of aging that we have today, and it is completely wrong. Throughout all of history, except for maybe the Vikings, where they would say, go walk off the cliff. Other than that, we had this thing called the village elder, and we venerated our old people because they knew all the stuff that you didn't know. And the reason that I'm so into this is that literally my life was saved, and certainly my brain was saved, and I can do what I can do today because people who were in their 80s who had studied this stuff for longer than I'd been alive said, oh, here's the stuff that works. And here's the stuff that we know about. Here's the latest studies. They had a sense of curiosity, but they had the energy to give back and share the things they knew. So I cultivate relationships with people who are 70, 80, 90, because they know all the stuff that I'm going to find. They know all the things I'm going to hit. And we need a world full of wise people who have the wisdom of decades of experience, who are willing, able, and charged up to go out and do good stuff. Because only them, in combination with the youthful energy out there, is going to stop some of the crap that's happening on the planet. And that means it's our job to show respect for all of that knowledge, but it's also your job when you're old to show up and to be able to show up. And that means if you think you're going to be infirm when you're old, maybe you are, but you should change that picture. When you're old, you're wise. And you walk under your own power, and you remember everything. And when you talk to someone who's 30, I remember what it was like to be 30. Your friends are all getting married now. You're spending most of your time traveling to weddings. But don't worry. In another 10 years, it'll be for birthday parties. And then another 5 years after that, it'll probably be for divorce parties. It's like, that's okay. You're going to see 3 more cycles like that. By the way, I don't know what cycles come after that. But no one tells you this when you're 25. Right? What if we had more of those? And by the way, Brian, if you were going to live for 180 or more years, maybe you'd take better care of the planet. And when you see a news thing that says, in 60 years, we're going to run out of topsoil, which is the thing that anchors carbon and grows our food, I'm pretty sure we better get on top of that, because I'm going to have to watch my kids and my grandkids have nothing to eat, not to mention me. Maybe I should take better care. And so we will have a much more conscious, aware, caring environment when we have more people who are going to live a long time. And that's why this matters so much.
That's really interesting. I've never actually heard it put that way.
It's really important.
Because with having longer life, you'll just be more considerate. You'll be thinking more into the future, planning more, and then probably just be much wiser at those ages anyways.
And you have this long-term view. And what's even better, if you're 80 or 90, it's pretty common to say, I've probably got a few good years left in me. And you start short-term thinking. But if you're 80 and you say, I'm only halfway there, you're not going to have short-term thinking, and you're going to plan for the future. And I know, and I've interviewed a few people like that. They're saying, I had to upgrade my friends. All my friends were dying because they didn't take care of themselves.
Or acting like they're dead.
Oh, there you go. Right. Yeah. And so I'm thinking of my friend Dan Sullivan. And he said, so I've started making sure I have friends in their 20s, friends in their 30s, friends in their 40s, and he's in his 70s. He's saying, because I'm nowhere done yet. So he's exercising and tracking everything, and he got his testosterone levels up to those of a 25-year-old just through his diet and exercise in his 70s. Right? This is all possible. And the thing is, it's possible, but there's this incredible universe of stuff you could do, and some of it's really expensive, some of it's really complex, some of it tastes bad like kale, which, by the way, doesn't work anyway. So you could spend your whole life goofing around like I did. I spent $1 million and God knows how many thousand hours trying things, some of which worked, some of which didn't. but I boiled it down. And that's why I write the books. That's why I do the blogs, why I do the show. Because if someone had told me this when I was 20, I would have taken all the energy that went into this and put it into something else useful. But this is what I did because it was a visceral self-interest.
When you see someone who's like in an infirm state, do you look at them and think, if you had just planned a little and thought a little bit more, you could probably be spry right now? I mean, I know it's a generalization.
I just look at them and then I judge them out loud. I'm like, loser. No, you can't do that.
I know you can't do that, but sometimes you see people on these little, I flew to see my parents in San Diego recently, and there was a woman next to us, and she was talking to us on the flight, and then to get out, she asked for a wheelchair, and they wheeled her out, and she was like maybe 65 or 70. And part of me thought, okay, if you had been moving your body every day and doing the right things and eating the right things, you could probably have jogged off that plane. So should I not judge like that? Or
I don't have those thoughts because I used to be 300 pounds. And I tell you, people look at me and be like, that fat slob. Like, guys, do you know that I worked out an hour and a half a day, 6 days a week, and I went on a low-fat, low-calorie diet the entire freaking time? And it didn't matter if I only got 2 hours of sleep. I exercised. I made it my top priority. And at the end of that time, I still weighed 300 pounds. It didn't work. I did everything you're supposed to do. And so I think fat people are willpower athletes. And there are people when they get old where they give up. Or they simply identify. They say, well, if I'm disabled, someone will take care of me. And they haven't done their inner work, that transform yourself stuff that you and I both care so much about, where you don't know your body's doing this to you. Your body will self-sabotage. And that's why I wrote Gamechangers, the book before this. So what's going on in there? Because if you have enough energy, but your software, your thought patterns, your emotions, even your spiritual stuff, if it's getting in the way, you can be infirm for reasons that aren't straight up biological. And so there's no way for me to know when I see someone like that. What I do feel is very likely is they probably got bad advice. And I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say they probably followed the bad advice the same way I did. And then it got them. And once you get to that point like I had with chronic fatigue, and putting one foot in front of the other, it's so hard. You feel like you have the accelerator all the way to the floor and you're slowing down. And you could push harder, but there's nowhere else to push. And you grit your teeth and I'm going to go to work anyway, and I'm going to go do it. And then you act like a jerk because you don't have enough electrons left to be a nice person. That's avoidable. It just is, but it requires a very different kind of thinking, a different kind of care model, different kinds of food, different kinds of doctors. So when I see someone like that, I'm like, we failed them. That's all I can think of.
Yeah, we failed them. But then nowadays the knowledge is out there. So I guess it's just important to get this knowledge.
But you say the knowledge is out there. How'd that vegan diet work for you?
Yeah, we can talk about that as well.
But here's the knowledge out there is wrong.
Yeah, you don't know what to think about. All right, should we talk about veganism right now? Or should we go into some of these things first?
Well, we talked about the 4 killers. I never answered that. You want to do that and we'll hit veganism?
Yeah, let's do that just to get that and the anti-aging thing. Then we're going to go into the diet and all this other stuff.
Okay, we'll do that. So there's 4 things that are likely to kill you if you're average. And one of them is cardiovascular disease. And this is the first step to living to 180, don't die. So look at what's likely to take you out and let's steer clear of those because that's just low-hanging fruit. So cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes, and Alzheimer's. One of those 4 killers is a precursor to the other 3, and that's actually diabetes. Diabetes is a disease where your body isn't very good at taking food and air and turning it into electrons. That's all it is. And there's a few different things that can cause that, but when you fix your metabolism, which means you become better at turning food and air into electrons, diabetes goes away. High blood sugar, it means there's sugar floating around that can't be turned into energy. So you fix it. And whether it's insulin resistance because of a cell membrane or because of what you eat, or there's all kinds of reasons, there's relatively simple things you can do that are in here that just lower your risk. Okay. So I suggest people tackle that one first. One of the things, intermittent fasting, which I think I first wrote about in 2011. And it's been a part of the Bulletproof diet since 2014, and it's since the book came out in 2014, and it's now becoming a thing. Don't eat after dark. That wasn't in the Bulletproof diet. There was some circadian sleep stuff, but the studies have come out now. If the sun's down, you shouldn't eat. It doesn't mean you never will, but if you most of the time don't do that, magic happens. So you just make these small tweaks, and all of a sudden you look around and you say, all right, I just cut my risk of these 4 killers a lot. Now what am I going to do? And then you start looking at the 7 pillars of aging. Things that actually cause aging that aren't likely to just kill you. Okay. The things that make you infirm. And then you start whittling away at the causes of those. Do less of the harmful things and maybe do some things to pull back the harm.
Okay, and some of that stuff is kind of about mitochondria, which you've been talking about for ages, which is down at the cellular level and just, I mean, how would you do a quick explanation of mitochondria?
Mitochondria, we like to call them the power plants of your cells. Not really true. What they are is they're the ancient bacteria that are embedded in your cells, and it's their job to sense the environment around them, and based on that knowledge, to decide what to do with food and oxygen. And they can choose to make energy, or they can choose to make different compounds. There's hormones they can make, different neurotransmitters, different signaling molecules. And they're the puppet masters of your body. They're in charge of all of the things you've ever done you're ashamed of. They run bacteria operating system before you can think. And what they do is they, number one, make sure you don't die right now. So they're focused on fear, running away from scary things or hitting them, things like that. They're focused on eating everything because famine kills a lot of species. They're bacteria. They don't know you're a human. They're dumb. So they're going to say, eat the cookie, and you're going to eat the cookie because they're the puppet masters. The third thing they do is they reproduce because that's what bacteria do, and that's why you go out on that date you know you shouldn't go out on, and you wake up next to the person you probably shouldn't have woken up next to. Your bacteria did that to you. You didn't do it. That's what the mitochondria really do. They're the frontline environmental sensors and decision makers for your meat operating system.
Okay, so it's important that they're on point.
Well, if they're old, you're old. It's that straightforward.
Okay, interesting. All right, that telomeres.
Telomeres
Yeah.
are these things that get shorter. Every time a cell divides, you have less of them. Eventually, you run out of them, and you can't have new cells. And we used to think, oh, you're stuck. But there's lots of ways to grow new telomeres. All of a sudden, if this cell can only divide 37 times before it's going to be done, what if it could divide 47 times instead because you did something? Well, those things are in the book.
Okay. All right. Anything else to touch on with the pillars of aging, zombie cells, and some things happening in the cells?
Zombie cells are a big thing.
Okay.
Zombie cells are cells that, as you age, they don't die, but they aren't doing what they're supposed to. They just sit there, take up resources, and make free radicals. And you get more and more of them the older you get. Well, what if you had a way to go in and surgically remove those, cause your body to do that? I don't mean surgically with a scalpel. I mean, just tell your body, hey, target those cells and get rid of them. Well, there are ways to do it that are herbal, that are nutritional, that are lifestyle, and even some pharmaceuticals, and they're all in the book. Some of them aren't very expensive, but they work.
Okay. So once we kind of set on those 7 pillars of aging, then we can start saying, okay, what do we do to affect those things? And that's when food and nootropics and all these other sleep and all this other stuff comes in. So should we start with food?
All right.
Because food, as you say in the book, is an anti-aging drug.
Mm-hmm.
That's a strong statement. What does that mean?
Food either makes you old or it makes you young. And a lot of times we eat for flavor. It's those mitochondria that tell you to do that. And oh, that was yummy. But if you know what food does to your aging and to how you feel, you can choose food that tastes good and doesn't make you old. Prime example there, eating fried things. I don't care if it's fried in coconut oil or fried in whatever. Fried food always makes you old. In fact, if you look at what a cigarette versus a bowl of French fries does to your vascular system in terms of inflammation, the cigarette is better for you than a plate of French fries. It's that big of a deal. Smoking's gross. So why is it that we say, oh, like you actually still smoke? You know, what's going on with you? And then we're saying that while we're eating French fries that are worse for you than smoking. So I don't eat fried stuff. And it doesn't matter if it's calamari, it doesn't matter if it's a Brussels sprout. If it was submerged in damaged oil, don't put that in your body. And I talk about exactly why in the book. And the science is very clear on that.
So it's damaged oil to a certain temperature, and you're going to have all sorts of bad things happen.
There's temperature, there's time, there's oxygen, there's light. Basically, you add the oil to your food after you're done cooking, or you cook at low temperatures with a little bit of water. And if you do that, it really changes how you feel. It changes how your skin looks. It changes how your brain works. It changes how the cells themselves are built. And if you did that, and let's talk about animal protein too. It turns out animal protein will kill you because spider venom will kill you. Therefore, we should all eat plants, right? Except, what is it, ricin, the nerve gas? Plant-based protein. They use that in the subway Tokyo tax. It's an illegal nerve gas. So therefore, plant-based proteins will kill you. So therefore, maybe plant-based and animal-based is a meaningless differentiator, which it is. Here's the truth. If you eat industrially raised and fed animals, you are going to die earlier than you should. You're contributing to degradation of soil and animal cruelty. It's bad for you. So straight up, you want to live longer? Spend twice as much on your meat and eat half as much. I am not telling you to eat no meat because you will not like what happens when you eat no meat, especially no animal fat. But when you do eat meat, make sure it's ethically raised, local if you can get it, and grass-fed. And when you do that, you feel different. And if you take that meat and you deep fry it or you burn it on a grill till it's all charred, it also will be bad for you. So gently cooked, non-blackened, 2 to 4 ounces of grass-fed meat once a day will absolutely transform your health. If you do that 5 times a day, it's not going to work. Because when you get more than 20% of your calories from any protein, but in particular animal proteins are even worse, your likelihood of dying from all-cause mortality goes up by 400%. What? So it doesn't matter whether it's a car hitting you or getting cancer or whatever, but for whatever would kill you, 4 times more likely to die if you eat 20% of your calories from protein. How many doctors, how many people listening to the show right now have heard and believe a high-protein diet is good for you? That is wrong. You do not want to be on a high-protein diet if you want to live a long time. And the science is in Superhuman. It's all written right there, and it has to do with amino acid ratios. You need enough protein to restore and build and maintain your cells and no more. Protein's a horrible fuel source for energy, but your body can do it to avoid starvation.
And what about these people on these all meat diets, the carnivore diets? I know Jordan Peterson swears by it, although he was suffering from some serious autoimmune stuff, I think. So for him,
I was too on autoimmune stuff.
What do you think about that?
I just interviewed James Saladino, who's one of the top experts. And even when I was developing the Bulletproof diet, I did the Eskimo diet, which was very close to an all-meat diet. I had 1 serving of vegetables a day. And the carnivore diet people would tell you, well, that's obviously vegetables are poison. There is method to the madness there. I don't believe that for most people, that's a great idea for long periods of time. Doing it for a month or 2 months can reset your gut bacteria in a very meaningful way. It'll let you make healthy cell membranes. But if you do it, in fact, I would say listen to the Bulletproof Radio interview with James about the carnivore diet, because he talks about grass-fed animals, how to cook them. And if you're saying, I'm going to live on ribs, you're not going to like what happens to you. So if you think being a vegan is hard, being someone who eats only meat is even harder, because you have to get enough collagen, which is the equivalent of fiber from animals. So what James does is he takes a grass-fed ribeye that's raw, and he pours the Bulletproof collagen protein on top of it to raise the percentage of glycine-based amino acids. So I'd say if you're going to do it, go into it and understand you can't put black pepper on it. Black pepper pokes holes in your gut. You can't put any spices on it. You're talking salt and meat and water. And it's a tall order. Do not do it forever. You won't like it and the planet won't like it. If you do it for a month, it might save your life. And it has actually saved the life of a good friend who's been on my show, who had leukemia. And he'd been fighting it for almost 10 years. Went on the carnivore diet for 3 months, leukemia gone. So there's merit to that diet.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.